All right, thanks, Nick and Barry. This is Phil from the Aerospace System Technical Group at HFES. A quick update on the show. Elena is deep into writing her thesis, so she's taking a short break from the podcast. In the meantime, I'm really glad to be joined by Andra Mahu.
Hey, thank you for having me. So I'm happy to be here. There's actually a lot happening right now around supersonic flight in the US. So we thought it would be a good moment to bring everyone up to speed.
Right, so in March of this year, the US House of Representatives voted to lift the ban on supersonic flight overland. It's a ban that has been in place since 1973. If the Senate also approves it, the legislation would give the FAA about a year to establish rules allowing civil aircraft to exceed Mach 1 over land as long as no sonic boom reaches the ground.
Right. And speaking of the ban, it was put in place because sonic booms generate loud and intense shockwaves that startle people and can cause damage to buildings, such as breaking the windows. And since the plane's flying faster than the sound, the people that are on board don't hear the boom, but everyone else in range does.
And so in research, I found out that the original ban went back to a pretty controversial set of sonic boom tests in Oklahoma City. For about 6 months, starting in February 1964, supersonic aircraft flew over Oklahoma City multiple times a day, sometimes up to 8 sonic booms daily, to study both structural impacts and public reaction. And the outcome was not good. There were close to 10,000 complaints about property damage, things like broken windows, cracked plaster, but more importantly, public reaction was strongly negative. Around 15,000 residents filed complaints, lawsuit, or protest letters. The FAA mishandling of communication didn't help either. Many felt that their concerns were dismissed. Political support eroded quickly, and that ultimately led lawmakers to ban supersonic flight over land.
But wait, what about Concorde? It was flying to New York until the early 2000s, no? Wasn't that supersonic?
Well, it was, but only part of the way. So the ban specifically applies to overland flight in the US. So the Concorde would go supersonic over the Atlantic, but then will slow down to subsonic speeds before reaching the US coastlines. And just to be precise, civilian supersonic flight isn't completely prohibited today. It's allowed under a special flight authorization from the FAA, but that's granted on a case-by-case basis rather than routine operations.
And this is why the new supersonic aircraft that's currently in development are looking at ways to reduce the sonic boom. So the most exciting program right now is built by NASA and Lockheed Martin, and the experimental aircraft is called the X-59 Quest, which stands for Quiet Supersonic Technology. This program has two goals. First is to build an aircraft that's able to fly faster than the speed of sound without generating a sonic boom, and the second is to fly it over several US communities in order to measure how people actually perceive that sound. And then using this data, regulators can then set new noise limits for supersonic flight, which could open the doors for commercial cargo and also passenger travel. Flight testing began in October 2025, and they're actively undergoing flight tests in California, and they recently completed 10 flights. So far, the X-59 has only flown subsonically, reaching 0.95 Mach, but they're targeting 1.4 Mach for their mission.
All right, and so what's their secret solution to reduce the aircraft sonic boom? Did they shrink the engines?
So the answer is the unusual shape of the aircraft. The aircraft has like a thin needle-like nose, which accounts for almost a third of its length. And essentially what this does, it helps break up the shock waves that would usually result in a sonic boom. From the ground, the sonic thump will be in the range of 60 to 75 decibels, which is similar to a car door closing when you're 20 feet away. Due to the unusual aircraft configuration, however, the cockpit is located almost halfway down the length of the aircraft, and it also doesn't have a forward-facing window. So instead, the Quest team developed the external vision system, which is a series of high-resolution cameras that are feeding in a 4K monitor in the cockpit.
Oh, hold on a second. You mean that the pilot cannot look outside while flying?
That's right. So there's no forward-facing window. The 4K monitor serves as a central window and allows the pilot to safely see the traffic and their flight path. It also provides additional visual aids for airport approaches, landings, and also takeoffs. This monitor also displays the video feed from two cameras outside of the aircraft, combined with terrain data from an advanced computing system.
Wow, that's very surprising. I remember from my days at Bombardier working on flight deck design, one of the core human factors tasks that we had was to verify the pilot's forward field of view. And that was called Regulation 25773. Now, there's guidance material that comes with that, and you will see that there are diagrams showing the volume of space that the pilot needs to see from their eye position. And it's not small, it's actually a pretty wide and deep field of view, especially forward and downward toward the runway environment. Now, that requirement is a big reason why cockpit windows are so large as they are. But those large windows, well, they come with trade-offs. So it affects the aerodynamics, and one consequence is that the peak wind noise tends to sit right above the pilot's head. If you could shrink the forward window, you would actually be able to push that noise source further aft, which would improve the acoustic environment in the cockpit. But of course, doing that would normally reduce the pilot direct outside view. And that's where you run into certification constraint. So traditionally, you're balancing visibility, aerodynamics, comfort, all within the regulatory limits. So when you look at something like the X59, which essentially replaced the forward window with a synthetic vision system, that's a pretty fundamental shift. So what are pilots saying about flying like that? Basically relying on a 4K display instead of direct out of the window view.
So actually, it's quite interesting, but pilots have grown comfortable using it. So NASA conducted a lot of flight testing to compare this video technology to actual forward windows in order to ensure that it provides the performance and safety levels that's equivalent to or even better than forward-facing windows. And NASA even quoted one of its pilots saying that in the unlikely event of a display failure, he can even land the airplane with the system turned off, basically relying on his vision through the aircraft side windows.
Right. And NASA isn't the only one pushing into this new generation of supersonic aircraft. You've also got Boom Supersonic, which is developing a commercial airliner designed to carry about 60 to 80 passengers with a target entry into service toward the end of the decade. Their demonstrator, the XB-1, has already completed flight testing, including supersonic runs where no sonic boom were heard from ground level. They took advantage of what is known as the Mach cutoff, where atmospheric conditions refract the shock waves away from the surface. And on a different front, there's Hermes working on their quarter horse Mk2. It's designed as the first remotely piloted supersonic aircraft. All right, so that's all we had for this week on Aerospace HFE. And now back to the main show.